All right, good morning, everyone. It's really lovely to see all of you. Thank you for being here. Today is our last message in our series, Restoration is for Real. And I'm going to be kind of wrapping it up with restoration in relationship. But I want to do a little bit of recap, because I think it's really hard to grasp the value or the importance of restoration in relationship without being reminded of what restoration is, how it works. And we really can't restore relationships. It's kind of like the last step. It's kind of the natural end result of restoring our hearts and restoring our relationship with God. So I'm going to get there, but I'm going to start off a little bit different. So throughout this series so far, we've worked on understanding what restoration is, and very shortly, the providence of restoration refers to God's work to restore human beings to our original, unfallen state so we may fulfill the purpose of creation. We've also talked about what it looks like in our life as we work to remove impurities in our hearts, in our minds, in our lives, particularly the fallen natures that were instilled in our first human ancestors. So and beginning with Lucifer, right? Lucifer failed to see Adam and Eve and see himself from God's viewpoint. He left his proper position as like an older brother and a teacher, reversed that dominion, and then multiplied evil. So we've been talking about how to see from God's viewpoint, right? It's so easy just to see the world, see others from the way they impact me and my feelings or what I want, and not necessarily from a larger perspective and how God created each person as a unique embodiment of truth and has their own divinity and has their own special spark to bring to the world. Sometimes those might be a little bit darkened or covered with other things, but they have it, right? We've been talking about maintaining our proper position, understanding the roles that we play in our life, whether it's as a child to our parents, as a spouse, as a parent to our own children, our roles in our work and in our friendships, in society, and then fulfilling our responsibilities in those roles. And not least at all, how to multiply goodness. And we talk about how mothers are just so good at that. We also talked about how we are the fruit of history, right? We're no longer living in the Old Testament age. In the Old Testament age, our relationship with God was that of a master, and I'm my servant. And my responsibility as a servant is to not make my master angry, right? Follow the laws. Don't break the rules. And that's pretty much the best you could hope for living in the Old Testament. But we're not living in the Old Testament. We're not even living in the New Testament age. In the New Testament age, Jesus introduced to humanity, you're not just a servant. God can be your parent. You can become an adopted into God's family. You can be God's child. And more than all those other rules, everything is encompassed in loving God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself. But also a lot of the New Testament age was based on faith. A lot of it is blind faith. And if you can do that, then you can be in favor with God. Like, just follow. But we're not living in the New Testament age either, right? We are living in the era after the coming of heaven. We have the ability, the potential now, to recognize God not as just an adoptive parent, right? If you're an adopted child, you have a different past. There's like a baggage, there's a pain that comes with that. But God is saying you don't have to have that. We can forget all of that. We can live as true children of God. And not just going on faith and blind faith, but really living in attendance, like God is present in my life. I don't just have to believe that God exists and have faith that God is working in my life, but I can get to the point where I live my daily life with God. I live, I breathe, I sleep, I eat. I make love with my spouse, with God. Like that's the kind of actual life with God that God intended for us. So the goal of religion is not just to make people realize that they are wretched and need saving. But the ultimate goal of religion is for us to become like little mini gods, with God living fully in each of us, in our thoughts and our actions. And words can be an encapsulation of what God would think and do and say. So that is the original plan, right? That's the ultimate goal of restoration. When the divine principle says the providence of restoration refers to God's work to restore human beings to our original unfallen state, that is the kind of life and the kind of relationship that we're talking about. And so it begins in our hearts, right? It actually begins first in our ability to be able to see from God's viewpoint, because that was the first thing that failed. Our mindset and how we view the world. Do I see with God's eyes or do I see with my eyes? Do I see how God is working not just in my life, but in my family and my society? Do I see how God has been working through history to this point? Can I see not just my own circumstances, but what God's hope is for the future? And like there's an actual path to that. And so it's not just me following my desires, but how can my special, unique talents contribute to this like overall goal that God has for all of us? And there's a lot of quotes about this. I have a few from our true father. The standard of heart comes first. We all need to grow. However, before we pursue growth, more important is cultivating a pure heart. So I think a lot of us, we desire to see the evidence of our growth. We want to develop skills. We want to have our degrees. We want to get the job. We want to be able to show people I'm growing. I want to be tall. I want to be in high school, right? All kinds of growth sound good to us. But more important first is cultivating a pure heart. Therefore, you need to take the time to pray and offer devotion. And then this quote, what is it that people have toiled until now to find? People have labored to find the divine heart that can come into the place of the human heart, right? Our original mind, that divinity that God, that seed that we all have inside of us. It's not like we have to build it or take it from somewhere else. We have to it's already there. We have to find it. We have been striving to unite our heart with this divine heart. Once our heart unites with this absolute heart, all attempts to remove this heart will fail. And I think your father talks about this a lot. The reason Lucifer, Adam and Eve fell away was they weren't actually there yet. Even though they were born without original sin, they were still growing to this point. They hadn't even discovered their own divinity yet. But once we get to that point, it's like there's nothing that can come between us and our God. So we have to begin from our heart. But where this shows up, right, where this is actualized, where the rubber meets the road, is in our relationships. Right? If our viewpoint is off, if my heart isn't centered, it will for sure show up in my relationships. We cannot have peaceful, loving relationships in our lives, especially in our families, if our hearts are selfish and we live only according to our desires and see only from my viewpoint, right? You can maybe put up a facade. Some people might think you have that kind of a family, but we know, right? It's always in our faces in our families. If our heart is off, we don't have anything to stand on or to build from. On the other hand, if our heart is centered, right? If I see things, if I see others from God's viewpoint and perspective, and then I strive to fulfill the responsibilities for the roles that I'm in, as a child of my parents, as a loving spouse, as a parent, our relationships will automatically become more smooth and fulfilling. It doesn't mean that they will always be easy. Marjorie's like, nope. It doesn't mean we don't have to work on them, right? But if we work on these first few things, right? The seeing from God's viewpoint, maintaining a proper position, fulfilling my responsibilities, then that becomes like a foundation. It's conducive to success, right? We still have to work on it. There might be things we have to do. But if we have the heart, right? If we're seeing from God's viewpoint, then that building that house is possible. Building that family is possible. Here's a nice quote from our true mother. Your heart is your closest teacher. In the face of difficulty or confusion, ask your heart. Your heavenly parent who loves you resides deep in your heart. You were designed to hear God's true voice. Isn't that beautiful? I think so many times we think, I have to find God. Where is God? Like, pray to God in the clouds, or God feels sometimes so out of reach. But our heavenly parent who loves us resides deep in our heart. Sometimes we're disconnected from our heart, and so it feels like God is far away. But our design, the way we were created, so lovingly made, is for ourselves to be a temple, right? A dwelling place, like our song, right? A dwelling place of God. And we are designed to hear God's true voice. So we all have that capability. A couple more quotes. These are from the Bible. Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. And draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. So it would be nice, it would be kind of a little bit more simple if we could just do that, right? If we could just work on our hearts, if we could just retreat from the stresses of the world and our responsibilities and all these people around us, and if we could just meditate and pray and get to a point where our heart feels clean and pure, and then, have a family. And then, figure out how to contribute to this world. But we're already in relationship. Even if you're not married yet, right? You are already a child to your parents. You might already have siblings. Many of us are already married and already have children. We're already in it. So for most of us, that wouldn't be a good idea, right? Just run away from everybody and everything and go to a retreat up in the Himalayas and meditate for 3 years to find inner peace, like in Kung Fu Panda. Those relationships are very real and very present. We face them every day. We face ourselves every day in the context of these relationships. But honestly, I think that actually the way to grow ourselves the most quickly and to restore our hearts the fastest is to practice it in these relationships. I would say it's more challenging, but it's very effective. I have this quote from our true Father: "We should be willing to make sacrifices in order to recover the family." And I think he's not just talking about our own little family, right? God's family. But if the father self-sacrifice saved his family, the children would say, "Father, you have worked so hard." If his sacrifice moved his wife to the very marrow of her bones, she would say, "Oh, my love, I'm so grateful to you." This is the way true people are. The individual sacrifices for the family. It's one thing to, step back and look at the world, try to see it from God's perspective. I think we can do that without too much effort, especially if we're not completely selfish people. I mean, there's all kinds, even pop music gets this. We are the world, we are the children, right? And we're like, yeah, I love it. But that's on the easier side to do, to step back and be like, well, God loves the whole world, they're all God's children. But it's another thing to look at your spouse, your husband or your wife, and to see them from God's perspective and to see the beauty and the divine nature that they have. It's interesting. I gave a Father's Day message a few years ago, and my mom was here. And in my Father's Day message, I shared about like the things that I learned and the values that I got from my dad, and like how there was a love of nature instilled in me, and how to be tough. and my mom was sitting afterwards. She was like, I was always kind of frustrated because I wanted your dad to parent you the way I parented you, because I thought that was best. Like moms know best. But she was like, I could see the things that I wish he was doing differently or doing better, but I didn't see from God's perspective like the beauty that he was giving to you that I couldn't give to you, right? There was something special that he had that means a lot to you that I didn't see it at the time. And so it took maybe 30 years, but then my mom was able to see my dad with that like new God's perspective and appreciate the qualities that he had and that he brought to our family. I also have the experience in my own life of, many of you have heard this story already, so I'll simplify it. But there was a time when I was really upset with Mike for moving me across country, and I felt he wasn't thinking about our future and the money, and I didn't want to be poor all my life. And so I went to our spiritual retreat in Korea in Cheonpyeong, and I was just, anytime I go to the prayer hall, I was just so angry. And because I don't usually dwell on anger or things like that, but when you're in the prayer hall, you can't hide anything. There was nothing else left to fall on, so it was just like rage. And I was really struggling with that for weeks there. But God finally got to my heart. He was like, do you want to be right? Like, is that the most important thing to you? Will that make you happy, at the end of your life, to be right? Or do you want to unite and you want to create a beautiful, loving family? I was like, well, yeah. It was like asked that direct question, and the answer was very clear to me. Like, I don't care about being right. And I let go, and then all of a sudden, I just couldn't wait to see Mike. I was like, oh, he has so many good qualities. He's such a good dad. He's like so conscientious, and he's such a good listener, and I really miss him. woman. For the last 2 weeks I was there, all I wanted to do was to go back and to be with my husband. But it was like could find, it was that separation of seeing just from what is important to me in the moment and how he's affecting me, and I don't like it, versus what is God blessed this man with? What amazing qualities does he have that are so unique that he brings to me and to our family and to the world? It made all the difference for us at that time. Also, it's one thing to fulfill our responsibilities, right? We're talking about maintaining proper position and not reversing dominion. Like, it's one thing to get to fulfill our responsibilities to society, to show up at your job and do it, pay your taxes, extend grace and courtesy to the people that you meet. A lot of people struggle with those things too. But I would say that's a little bit on the easier side. It's another thing to show up for your children, to maintain your role and position as a parent, as the subject of love in the family, right? To not, your mood doesn't depend on how your children respond to you, but you maintain absolute love to your children. To show up for them and to play with them, even if you're tired after work. To embrace them when they're pushing you away and having a tantrum. Or when they're a teenager and like, you just don't get me. I hate you. Isn't our natural response to be like, well, I hate you too. If somebody were to say that. We don't do that to our children, but it's like, but there's something in this that gets triggered when somebody says, I don't, like, you're doing this wrong, or you don't get me, then it's like, well, you don't understand me. What am I trying to do for you, right? So, learning how to do that in our families is where the growth can happen so quickly. I feel like I've been growing a lot. I have a daughter who I have been learning how to lean into just really seeing the God's divinity in my youngest. Because I think it's easy to try to make your children into what you think is a good person. Like me. Or what you think, would fit well with society. You don't want them to struggle, so you want them to fit. But the people who've done the most for the world haven't fit very well. And so if I think from that perspective, I think Annalise has something really, really special to give to this world. And so I've been trying to, instead of seeing from my perspective, of course she needs guidance, right? Of course she needs boundaries. Sometimes she needs some real discipline, but really seeing, instead of like trying to make her fit into something that I think is good, seeing like what has God put in her that could be so impactful to others, what she has to offer to this world. I've been growing a lot. Right? These are the kind of things where the rubber meets the road. So it's easy to to be like, why is this happening to me? Like fighting with my spouse again, or my kids are making me upset again. They're not listening. It can be easy to feel frustrated or angry or try to blame somebody. But I think these are actually our opportunities to restore our hearts. So instead of, I think it's like a little flag that gets waved when we get like why? We can instead think, there's a flag, here's an opportunity, this is my chance to do something maybe different. Because I think we tend to respond in a certain way, right? We try to make things go the way we want them to go, but how is that going for you? So if you're getting the same results by doing the same things, let's instead see this little flag as an opportunity to see from God's viewpoint. See, there's an opportunity here for me to, instead of doing the same thing or saying the same things that I always do, change my heart. Try something new. Maybe you'll get different results. But I commend all of you for being on this earth and working on restoring your hearts while in relationship, right? I think ideally we would grow up with all that. Before the fall, God's ideal is for us to grow up with all that support and experiencing true love from above and below and all sides, and it would be like a natural growth process. But we're not in that. And so we're kind of God is with us, and yet we are thrown into it. We have to do it in relationship while we're working. We have to work on ourselves while we're working with each other, and it is a challenge. But you're all here. You're doing it. And so I just encourage you to not give up, to keep working on restoring our hearts while we're in relationship. And I'm going to offer a prayer. Heavenly Parent, good morning. Thank you for this beautiful beginning of June, heading into the summer months where everything in nature is glorious and full and coming to fruition. And I pray that in our own lives that we can also find ways to bring our relationships to fruition, to continue to grow them while we're growing ourselves. And in the whole time, we just want to keep looking to you. We want to keep looking for your heart, looking for your perspective, reminding ourselves that you are actually already here with us, and we just sometimes need to dig a little bit deeper and let go of our ego, let go of our pride, to find how much you want to manifest yourself through us. And it's a beauty and it's a blessing to be here, to be your children. We're grateful we're not living in the Old Testament age and the New Testament age. We have so much potential to live with you in reality, and we're grateful for the opportunity. And we just offer this time to you, this message this week, and I pray this in my name, Michael and Adonia Hendrick, the Blessed Central family. Amen and adieu. Thank you.